Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Dr. Michael Patmos, and I've got a doozy for you today. I guarantee you, no one else has thought of this angle. This is a first exclusive content here on Substack. So, for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm a board certified general internal medicine physician with extra qualifications in infection control and hospital epidemiology. Been a doctor for 45 years, faculty member at multiple academic medical centers, still practice to this day. Also have a master's degree in management from the University of Southern California, Marshall School of Business, and have been a physician executive for 25 years. So, what is today's crazy video about? Well, if you've been following the news lately, there's something really interesting going on. And I have a connection to draw for you that I don't know anybody else has made this connection. As you well know, Donald Trump has been trying for a long time, a year or so, since he was elected the second time around, to get a Nobel Prize. He has been begging, pleading, cajoling, arm twisting, putting pressure, going to the media, crying, kicking in his sandbox, all the things that a toddler would do to get that Nobel Prize. And not surprisingly, the Nobel Prize Committee has not given him a Nobel Prize and pretty much laughed at his. You can't demand to get a Nobel Prize. And he invented this, mythology that he had stopped 8 wars, which isn't true, to try to, push his way into the Nobel Prize winning category. Well, who did win the Nobel Prize was the opposition leader of Venezuela. And now, as you know, we just invaded Venezuela and captured the illegitimate president and his wife, and they're now in jail in the United States. And the popular leader, Ms. Machado, uh, who was elected but never allowed to hold office because of Maduro, is now trying to become the president. And when asked about it, Trump said pretty plainly that he's not supporting her because, after all, she got the Nobel Prize, and he didn't. He actually kind of came out, and people in the administration have echoed the notion that his lack of support for Machado is because she got the Nobel Prize and he didn't. So what did she do? She went right on Sean Hannity and Fox News and groveled like an obsequious sycophant, fawning over Donald Trump and how great he is, and saying that she's perfectly willing to share her Nobel Prize or give her Nobel Prize to him. So it really appears that what happens now with Venezuela is very much tied to envy over the Nobel Prize. So the Nobel Prize envy is now directing, guiding, influencing U.S. Foreign policy in matters of life and death and war and peace. Nobel Prize envy. But wait, that's not the only place where Nobel Prize envy is showing up. It's also at the root cause of our vaccine policy. Because Donald Trump isn't the only one who feels he deserves a Nobel Prize. Dr. Robert Malone, the doctor who claims falsely that he invented mRNA vaccines and mRNA vaccine technology, also feels that he deserves a Nobel Prize. And he's made it very clear in many venues. I put some links below you need to look at, where he has basically talked about the fact that he should have gotten the Nobel Prize. They cut him out of it. He was passed over, so on and so forth. Even in some podcasts suggested that he was on it, that he had been nominated for a Nobel Prize. Just so you know, the Nobel Prize Committee doesn't release lists of nominees. So there's no evidence that he was ever nominated for a Nobel Prize, nor would he be. His contribution to the mRNA vaccine situation is that when he was a medical student, just after having finished his master's degree at UC San Diego, he was a medical student in an MD program. He was assigned to Dr. Inder Verma, who was his PhD advisor, and his mentor, and he also had uh, he was also responsible to Dr. Philip Felgner, who was at Vical and who had come from Syntax in Palo Alto, where he invented lipofectin, that fatty substance that can be used to transfect DNA, RNA, and oligonucleotides. And it was Dr. Felgner who, in 1987, in a paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, wrote that he found that using lipofectin you could transfect DNA, and that it could also theoretically be used to transfect RNA and and even oligonucleotides. And that right there in the textbook. 2 years later, Malone actually did that research under the direction of Dr. Verma and Dr. Felder, basically doing their research using Dr. Felgner's lipofectin to do what Dr. Felgner suggested, which was try to use it to transfect RNA, and lo and behold, it works. A paper was written. The med student got his name on the paper. As you know, in science papers, it's the last name that is the primary author, not the first name. Usually, it's the junior author or the med student who's given a little gold ring or a little apple by a little prize, a little lollipop by having their name go first. Malone's name is first on the paper in 1989, and he has now since claimed that he was the inventor. It was all his idea, when actually Felger had written 2 years earlier that lipofectin could be used to transfect DNA, RNA, and oligonucleotides. It was not Malone's idea. He was a student. He tried to take credit for it. He even wrote his name on the patent, which got crossed out. And then he ended up getting booted out of UCSD and getting booted out. He quit Vical and almost got, that was a mess. So, anyhow, it's Dr. Malone who's also got Nobel Prize envy, just like Donald Trump. And because he didn't get the Nobel Prize for messenger RNA, he has decided that he is going to take down messenger RNA. And man, he has. He has nearly single handedly destroyed messenger RNA vaccine prospects as from a marketing standpoint. I mean, if you look at the stock valuation for Moderna, it's just, collapsed. No one's getting the mRNA vaccine. The people who are supposed to get it aren't getting it. No one trusts it. And everyone has just basically echoed Malone's statements that the RNA vaccine is dangerous and it's gene therapy and blah, blah, blah. And he was the one that started all of that anti mRNA stuff because he's the one with the most credibility. Because after all, he said, and unchallenged, said that he had invented it. So, in the eyes of the public, he's the expert. He invented it. And he says it's dangerous and ineffective. Everybody nods their head and says, well, it must be. And so Malone, who again was a med student, is the perceived authority on messenger RNA vaccines. So now Malone he made it very clear in many articles, including the article I attached below in the New York Times, where he was talked extensively about the fact that he was passed over for the Nobel Prize and had felt that he was written out of the history. So here's the analogy. Right now we have foreign policy in Venezuela driven by Nobel Prize envy, and we have vaccine policy as pretty much dealing with mRNA vaccines. But now it's, Malone's anti-mRNA vaccine stance has bled over into general anti-vaccine um, positioning. He's, of course, he pulled the rug from under universal hepatitis B vaccination at birth, and he's still going around arguing against, you know, mandatory, childhood vaccinations and so forth. So what started as an anti-mRNA vaccine position has now become broadly anti-vax. So what's interesting is how Nobel Prize envy is now driving American vaccine policy and American foreign policy, at least in our hemisphere. So this whole thing of Nobel Prize envy, it's a lot like penis envy. Everybody wants one, and the bigger the better. And if I can't get what I want, darn it, I'm just gonna throw a monkey wrench in the works here, and I'm gonna mess everything up until I get what I want. And so this is what we're dealing with today. We've got Nobel Prize envy as the basis of American foreign policy and vaccine policy. When does this end?